I just remembered what I named this morning's Dharma talk. What did I name it? Three Donuts. Yes. I thought that might be much more interesting a title than the other title, which was almost that. Three don'ts. Three don't do-ems. Don't do it. After I do that, then I'll do the three do-nuts. The three do's. So first, don't. Don't look away from anything. Don't hide out from anything. Don't shut down on anything. Don't ignore anything. Don't do it. And if you do that, if you find yourself spontaneously shutting off, closing down, turning away, then begin observing that without particularly adding on some kind of a judgment like, I shouldn't do that. Don't scold yourself, lecture yourself. Just use awareness itself. Awareness itself is very lonely until it is not separate from anything. And then it doesn't need anything else. It has all the company it needs. You could say awareness is king, awareness is queen. You could say awareness is sovereign or royal. Awareness. Lead with your awareness. Lead when you go into a room. Have your awareness go in ahead of you, not your preconceptions, your hopes, your fears, your ideas about who's in there, what's in there. If you're led around by the nose in that way, you'll miss your life. You'll miss the very life that was laid out for you before you were born. You'll miss the very lessons you were meant to see. Because you'll shut things out. So how do we begin to do that? We begin by observing, seeing the way in which we shut things down. You can't just start by just not doing that anymore. Have you noticed? You can't do that. We don't have that much say-so. We have very little say-so. Where was I? I like that. That's true. Thank you. But we have a little bit, we can see a little bit what's going on with us. We have a little bit of understanding, a little bit of awareness. Excuse me. And we can have, you could say, more of that by stretching that awareness, increasing, exercising, prioritizing the awareness by sitting down and looking at something that's not so interesting, a wall. You might say, well, I'd rather be out in the forest and watch the birds. And you could, but that's more like entertainment. It's kind of filling up the world with entertainment. Not wrong, just prioritize it, reschedule it. Sit all morning, wander in the woods all afternoon. That would be good. Let me know when you do that. I apologize for my nose blowing. So don't look away. Don't distract yourself. And if you do find yourself spontaneously distracting yourself by leaving a situation that you don't care for, maybe even something that's boring, and going into some kind of entertainment, might even be a walk in the woods, like I was saying. Could be almost any number of things. It's not wrong. We're not talking about right and wrong. That's a lower level of thinking. We might have to use that on fourth graders. But as adults, we don't need that kind of a standard. You really don't. If you're operating out of right and wrong, it's a very primitive way of looking at things. And it's about judgment. It's about warfare. It's about punishment. It's all that stuff. It's just What's the Sanskrit word I usually use for that? Bullshit. It's just not true. I mean, it's not a valid way to work with our lives. It's just about impossible to not succumb to that occasionally. We might go down into that, but then through our awareness practice, we can back out of that again. And everyone does that in a different way. So don't correct anyone. If you see someone falling into that pit of judgment, of condemning others, of blaming others for what's happening, how you're feeling a certain way, someone else is the cause. Not so. I'm not saying there can't be triggers, because we are all dependently arisen. We're not separate from anybody. Your best friend, pretty obvious there. Not separate. Your worst enemy or your most difficult relationship, also not separate. You can't have an enemy without relationships. You can't be unrelated to somebody that is your foe. And why is that foe? I got a laugh and a smile. I won't go there. That's silly. And of course, this is serious. So don't turn away if you can help it, if you can see it, and you'll see it better if you do the sitting practice of meditation. The sitting practice of meditation itself is not very interesting. If it's interesting, you're probably not doing it correctly, at least the way I teach it. You're not doing it the way I teach it. You're doing it as a kind of an entertainment to see rainbows and unicorns. Meditation, as when it is actually working to strengthen the awareness, to uncover the Buddha nature, your wisdom mind, the nature of your mind that is already yours, is your birthright. You already are not separate from the Buddha, but you might spend many, many lifetimes trying to understand that. And lifetimes also are dependently arisen. They're not separate. So you don't have another you that lived in the 14th century. That's not separate from this one. It's not somebody else. Surprise. So don't look away. This is called, in Buddhism, the word for this is ignorance that we use. Is ignoring something, ignorance. The three poisons are passion, aggression, and ignorance. So the other two donuts, the next one is don't believe. Don't believe anything. Don't believe. In other words, when something appears, it doesn't need your validation to either be there or not. It doesn't need you to subscribe to it or sign on the dotted line. It's just what it is. It's just something that arises. It's just something that comes up. True and false from the point of view of doing a little grooming here. True and false are things that we go into when our awareness is just too intense, and the openness, we get kind of what is the word, agoraphobia about not knowing. We don't like all that space, so we'd rather fill it up with belief or judgment or some kind of definition. So at least we know something. At least we have some kind of a touchstone. The problem with that, well, let's go with the good part. The good part of it is you have something to hang on to. Whew. Like the edge of your crib. And I'm not talking about your pad. I'm talking about your bassinet. So the good thing is you have a reference point, but the bad thing or the difficult thing or the challenging part of it or the negative part, if we want to use that kind of a word, is that you've shut down on the awareness that needs to be able to see what is true. We really need to see this ourselves. There's no way this particular spiritual path is not a belief system. There are some spiritual paths that use the belief in a supreme being or a higher self, higher being, and I'm totally in favor of that if that's what you want to do. If you want to do that, I wouldn't disagree and say, oh, you should do what I say. No, you should do what you say. You should do what you feel is correct for you. And if you have a theistic orientation and need that, then do that. Use that. You don't have to get rid of it. Or what? Disbelieve it. That's the other donut. Don't disbelieve anything. Whatever shows up, don't disbelieve. Don't immediately jump into, well, I don't believe that. How many times are we in conversation, or we listen to a conversation where people, as if it's some kind of valid thing that human beings do, just as if it's something that, do you believe, what do you think about that? Do you believe that? Nah, I don't believe that. Yeah, me either. How about this other thing? Do you believe that? Yeah, I believe that. Me too, I believe that too. Do you believe astrology? I don't know, I don't believe that. That sounds like anybody who looks at a bunch of animals in the sky, it's got to be nuts. And these are just simple-minded kind of expressions of crazy, and the one that rhymes with that, lazy. Crazy and lazy. Lazy because we don't want to actually look into it ourselves and see, what is this? Rather than listen to someone else's propaganda. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. Well, yeah, listen to me, but don't believe anything I say. Don't disbelieve anything I say. And if you can, don't ignore it either. I mean, actually consider it. I often say, and I'm saying now, give me the benefit of the doubt. Don't believe anything I say. But give me the benefit of the doubt. Listen, say, and consider that with your own intelligence. I'm actually quite agreeable when people are disagreeable. And I can be very disagreeable when people are agreeable. That's kind of a koan. Not really. Terrible koan. So, again, don't accept it, believe it. Don't reject it, disbelieve it. And don't shut down, look away, or ignore what is there. So actually look at everything, anything that's arising in your life, whether it's an emotion that happens as you're brushing your teeth, you start to feel something about something someone said. Don't ignore that. Don't add to that with your commentary or your belief. That's what we do. When you start to describe what you're feeling, this is why you're proceeding into belief. You're validating that. Or the commentary may be very negative, where you're negating that, saying it's not true. This is going in circles. You actually have the intelligence, and being a human being, being a sentient being in this world, you have the intelligence and you have the birthright to just be here with no backup. You need no justification for being here. So you don't need to have a position. You don't need to have an opinion. You don't need to have a political party. These are all. This is what we do when we can't handle not knowing. We can't handle the open space that is our wisdom mind. It's open. And if the ego mind, or the self-centered mind, or the mind that's worried about advancing oneself to look good, or defending oneself because you don't want to look bad, that mind is settling for a lower level of functioning. We're not saying it's wrong, not about that. I'm just saying that we're backing away from the very insight that is available to us all the time, that is available right now. My teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who passed away in 1987, would say, everything is sacred. Everywhere you look, there's nothing but sacred world. And this isn't opposed to evil world. It's that everything is fundamentally sacred. Everything is, the more mundane way of saying it is, everything is basically good. That's an astonishing thing to realize. And it's quite threatening to ego or self-centered mind who wants to know, am I right or am I wrong? It's like the talk, reminds me of the talk that Chazon gave yesterday on the three jewels, and also on the precepts. Both Chazon and Unyo gave separate talks on that topic. So the forms, or the whole idea of a setup like do this but don't do that, which is kind of like a form, is meant to help support our awareness, not make us a prisoner of it. So just like the forms that we do here in the morning service, there's a certain way this is done, and we try to do that, and we're doing that so that we can train our awareness, not so that we can see how well we can do the form. Of course, you do the form as well as you can, but the most important thing is the awareness that is happening as you're doing that form, repetition over and over and over and over, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. In the Tibetan tradition, they don't get off quite as easy. They don't do it just 4,000 or 5,000 times. We do it millions of times. Hundreds of thousands. And what you eventually see is you can't really repeat anything. So 3 donuts. Don't ignore. Don't look away. Don't distract yourself from something. And if you manage to not distract yourself, and in other words, maybe you get some help from what it is. Maybe it's a car wreck. Pretty hard to distract yourself from that. You're in the car wreck. Then I would say don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. It's just what it is. It has its own life, its own dynamic. But if you're busy judging or evaluating, you might as well be putting on one blindfold after another, because you won't see what is actually there showing up in front of you as the dependently arisen situation that is completely unique. Now, that's never happened before. You might have a million car wrecks, but there's only, if you pick out one, there's only one that's just like that, with those people at that time, at that intersection, with that particular mistake, if you want to call it that, or looking away. Completely unique. Every thought that arises in your mind is completely unique. It comes out of causes and conditions. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't look away. Now for the 3 do-nuts. Just looking to see if that's funny to anyone. Apparently not. Probably won't use that again. The 3 things that you should do. And this is different with everyone. For one thing, I would say you should come here and listen to this. But if you feel you should do otherwise, then do something else. You should trust yourself. So the things that I like to emphasize that people should do is same thing you learned in 3rd grade. When you come up to a street, stop, look, and listen. Remember that? Stop, look. Any trucks coming this way? So stop. In other words, spend some time, take some time out of your busy life. You jump out of bed in the morning, or maybe you crawl out, as I do. Crawl into the shower. And you do this, and you have breakfast, and you go to work, or you come here, or you do whatever your project is for that day. And I would suggest something you can do is stop. Find a place here if you're close by, or at home. Find a place where you can it might be on your back porch, it might be in a lawn chair. I'm not saying that you can't sit and look at a tree, but find some place to stop the body from moving. Because if you stop this, do everything you can do to completely hold still, you'll notice some things keep moving. The breathing keeps moving, the blood flow keeps moving, the heart keeps beating, hopefully. Certain things keep moving, and thoughts keep moving. Please observe them. That's the other one. Observe. So stop and observe. I was going to give you another don't, but I got to come up with a do here, don't I? don't I? Or donut I? And having fun with those words, but I'm really serious about this. Actually, don't believe or disbelieve or look away. Don't accept it. Don't reject it. Don't shut down. Passion, aggression, ignorance. Those are the three poisons in Buddhism. Those are the three activities, the three kinds of energy that will take you away from your wisdom mind. And those are, you could say, conditioned by what's called the bandits of hope and fear. The bandits that actually steal your wisdom mind, that are laying in ambush. You're there, you're going along fine, and suddenly you get very fearful about something. Or you're going along, or you're doing fine, then you get very hopeful about something. We're not saying either one of those are wrong, but just keep an eye on that dynamic as it happens in your own consciousness after you leave here. I have a 45 minutes or whatever to talk to you a little bit. You get the rest of your life, hopefully. Questions, please. Yes.
What were the other two do-nots? You said stop.
I said stop, look, and listen.
Oh, okay.
No, stop, hold still, and observe. Let me move it different directions, but that's a pretty good one. That's basically meditate in three, broken down into three parts. And there's all kinds of ways to do this. My goodness, when I started, there was like 3 books on this, and maybe 5, maybe 10 if you went to the university in the 60s, mid-60s. And there's all kinds of different directions that you can go with this. There's Tantric Buddhism, there's Zen Buddhism, there's Soto Zen, Rinzai Zen. There's all the various approaches the Koreans take, the Chinese Chan Buddhism. There's the Theravadan, or the religion of the elders. There's 18 schools at the time of the Buddha passed away. There are apparently 18 different schools, 18 different interpretations of what he said. So good luck. Talk about politics. And they all were arguing with each other, except Ananda. He was just busy writing down what the Buddha said. So I would say whatever resonates with you, you don't have to do this, but find a spiritual path. If you can, find a teacher, a person who knows a little more than you do, maybe a lot more than you do, maybe understands, or maybe it has you have a similar wavelength where your communication is good. And only you'll know that. The teacher might know also, but he or she or they are not going to tell you that necessarily. The only person I've told that to was Senshu. That's because I could tell Senshu didn't know what to do. I told Senshu to move to the monastery, and she did. Yes, Ryan.
I think I remember you saying nothing's new before. How can situations be unique if they're also not new?
Because of the causes and conditions, because of various, a little of this, a little of that, different shape here and different color, different texture. So the combination of things come together. It provides us with a particular situation, which is one thing in a sense. Although we do that with our mind, actually it isn't one thing. It's not separate. So it's not even one. It's not one. It's not many. If you read the teachings, I'm not saying anything particularly new. Not one, not many. So this is an encouragement, not so much to give us some kind of something to, finally I know that it's not one, not many, but it's something to put into your mental processes, your thinking process, your awareness process, however you want to look at it or understand it, and see that you can't actually get a reference point on anything. There is no reference point. The idea here is to function out of your awareness. If you function out of your awareness, other people you won't even know what you are. I mean, you'll still function as a human being, more than likely, but you won't really know what you actually are. You may use Buddhism as a device or a tool or a form to help you to help others or to help yourself, but you may or may not call yourself a Buddhist. You can practice Buddhism without ever even mentioning Buddhism. It's just, all Buddhism is seeing the truth. And if you actually see it, you won't particularly preach it. You won't try to get other people to do it. That's relative stuff. More? Yes, Lisa.
How do you live in this world without getting bullied into belief or disbelief?
Just watch the bullying. Don't go to war with the bullying, which is just about impossible, not to do some kind of fighting or some kind of... I'm not saying you shouldn't feel aggravated. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel pissed off about this, that, or the other thing. But don't go further into it and actually, well, in your case, pick up your sword, and start swinging it. Yeah, I remember you're a sword fighter. So it's challenging because there's no actual protocol for doing it. It almost needs to be, not even almost, it does need to be done out of your individual awareness. So after this talk is over, I'm not here for people to chat with. So I would say trust yourself, and if you find yourself going towards something, then look closely at what that's about. Look at the intention, look at the motivation. And in our path and what the vows you're getting ready to receive are called Jukai or Bodhisattva vows. You're actually going to take a vow to put other people before yourself. That's a big step. And it's powerful. It just takes over your life. So that not that you can't have your own things that you want to do, you can still have horses. Yeah, and a husband. But you actually are starting to put others before yourself, and that will happen with each person in their own way. Some people need to go further and become fully ordained. Some people don't need to receive Jukai at all. They just understand that and begin to do that without doing some kind of formal vow. Other people need more glue. I certainly needed the glue and still need it, so that I know what I'm here to do. No mistake. More? Other questions? Yes, sir.
You said don't look away to anything that arises. In reference to a bad habit or addiction, when craving arises, is it as simple as simply being aware of said craving?
It's very complicated with each person, but yes, if you can look at the craving, because as soon as you jump away from the craving, then the conversation about, well, it's okay, I've been doing pretty good for 3 weeks, I can use one more time. I need it right now. I'm going through a really difficult time. This is really having a difficult time. My dog died. And I'm not making light of your dog dying, but I'm saying we can use something like that to promote that continuation of some kind of a bad habit or addiction or something. So meditation or awareness practice won't do it for you, but it'll give you a stronger light on what your self-deception is. Because addiction, even though if it's backed up by chemicals, alcohol, whatever kind of drugs, and there's just about everything out there today, including legal ones, probably the worst ones are the legal ones. And that makes it even more difficult. And so find some way to hold still. Find some way to make yourself, I don't know how else to say this. There's probably shows up different for everyone. Find some way, if you're having difficulty with using or with addiction, find some way to separate some time out where you can really hold still and just watch the mind tumble. Don't concern yourself with the tumbling. That's what you're there to do, just watch it. And don't concern yourself with, will this ever stop? Because what you're doing, you're actually strengthening an invisible muscle. And that invisible muscle is awareness. And that awareness, when you get next time you get yourself in a tight spot of some kind, you're more aware of it. You can see more clearly, well, I'm not going to, it's like you don't have to be trained necessarily to keep your hands out of the cookie jar if the cookie jar actually has flames coming out of it. Don't touch those cookies. No problem, I won't. Because that's what you're actually doing. You're actually walking into a burning house. A person who doesn't have an addiction problem, at least not the kind that's really intense or takes your life away or threatens your life, when they see someone who is addicted it's like them watching them walk into burning houses. And they want to say, just don't do that, just stop doing that. But what I would say is, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but I'm saying be very aware of what that feels like. Who is it that's walking into that? What is it I'm really looking for here? Because what you're going to get is suffering, intense suffering. You already know, and I need to tell you. You wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be asking me that question. So you already know that. So I would say you don't have to become a Buddhist. I think it probably helps, but you don't have to. But train your mind. Sit down, hold still, find a blank wall. Should be somewhere. If there's something on it, take it out. Throw it away. Unless it's a Rembrandt, then don't throw it away. Sit down, hold still, find a posture, either this one or this one, hold very still, and do that for an hour or two a day. You get 24 hours in a day. Sleep 7 hours. Meditate the other hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and strengthen the witnessing part of the consciousness, which we never do. Constantly, we're getting up and going this way and thinking this, thinking that. And then we get reinforced by other people who are spinning in their minds. And even though their intent is to help us, if you look really close, the more you meditate, the more you'll see how people are just spinning. Rarely do you find a person who's just sitting still looking at you. Everybody wants something. Have you noticed? Even this old man wants something. And what do I want? I want you to wake up, see who you are. That's what I want. Further questions? We got time for another one or two. Very good, thank you.
I stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our blue chancel. Once again, would like to remind everybody about our donation boxes that are in the hallway. Your financial support helps support these teachings. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this Saturday is our all day, the end of the month sitting from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and please join us if you are able.
May the weirdness penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o-san.
Our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who's unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with